broadly.
So was it because the president was encouraged by the use of this drug that you became discouraged by it?
And nothing to do with politics, sir. I wanted to make sure that Americans were aware of the risk of this drug. It was only available under very...
But it is a drug that is indicated and has been used safely in the past.
By almost 1.5 minutes. You can finish your answer, Dr. Bright, and then we're going to move to the next member.
The drug had been used safely for malaria for a number of years. We didn't have a database of...
But it's being used in the same dosage as it was used for malaria.
Please. And I know that I'm overly generous with both sides of the aisle.
Speaking of generosity, as of 2020, Congressman Anna Eshoo was the #1 recipient of pharmaceutical money while chairing the House Health Subcommittee.
But I think that we need to move on. I mean, 2 minutes of extra time is 2 minutes of extra time.
People died because you weren't listened to.
People died because they didn't have appropriate protective equipment.
And your statement that we need to be told the truth is probably the most important statement we've heard all day.
I think that you are the finest ambassador in our country for scientists. Frankly, I'm tired of those who bear the responsibility, accepting none of it, while deflecting blame on others. The previous administration, the World Health Organization, the Wuhan lab, anywhere but where the blame belongs. And we all have been witnessed your integrity.
Let me just say, Dr. Bright, thank you for your courage.
The president has sidelined our best scientists, pushed baseless conspiracy theories, and more recently prescribed unproven remedies like Lysol to suffering Americans.
Because the president was encouraged by the use of this drug that you became discouraged by it?
And nothing to do with politics, sir. And nothing to do with politics, sir.
On October 13th, 2020, 2 weeks before the election, Rick Bright appeared in a documentary titled Totally Under Control.
There was not a scientific reason to push either one of those drugs.
No scientific reason aside from 400 years of human history.
The reason they were pushing them so hard was because the president was claiming that they were a miracle drug. Someone had given him this advice, and nothing to do with politics, sir. I lost it. I lost all respect for that chain of command, for that security, and nothing to do with politics, sir. It's not easy to come forward in this administration, okay? I'm not trying to be soften here, but it is not easy. It was a very hard process to lay our careers on the line to push back.
Keep in mind, he's basically crying about tonic water.
And nothing to do with politics, sir.
Whether it's right or not, data will show. But, if 2 years from now we have the studies and we say, hey, that stuff really would have worked, and the government stopped that from being used, if I was a family of a person that was stopped from getting hydroxychloroquine, I'd be pretty mad.
So who came up with the idea to deny hydroxychloroquine for early treatment? According to Rick Bright's sworn whistleblower statement, on March 24, 2020, Dr. Janet Woodcock called Dr. Bright and strongly recommended that BARDA submit an application for an EUA instead of an expanded access IND protocol. The idea to deny early treatment came from the FDA. Rick Bright's complaint continues. Over the next several days, Dr. Bright and Dr. Woodcock urged their colleagues on the clinical and regulatory teams implementing the Secretary's directive to secure an EUA for chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine instead of a national expanded access IND protocol. Implementing the EUA was a compromised position to rein in HHS leadership's initial campaign to make the drug available to the public outside of a hospital setting and without physician supervision. A tactic that guaranteed the drug would not be used early when it was needed.
Peter Navarro had to go down and have a huge fight in the Situation Room just to get the tablets. And I don't know how he did it, but within a week or so, we had 62 million doses. This was the answer. This would have halted the pandemic. It would have brought it under control. 52 other countries have used it successfully to keep their pandemic, their hospital admissions under control. We wouldn't have surged out into the number of cases we had and the deaths.
At the time, Janet Woodcock was the head of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, also known as CDER. In her role, as with Rick Bright, their jobs were primarily to streamline and facilitate the development of new drugs and new vaccines. They worked heavily with pharmaceutical companies and were probably the last people who should have been involved in getting approval for early use for one of the safest, cheapest, and most beneficial medications in human history.
There was a single point failure in this entire pandemic plan which would have worked. Orders came down through Secretary Azar at Health and Human Services, to Bob Cadlick at Pandemic Planning, to Janet Woodcock, and to Rick Bright. This needed an investigational new drug authority. All that is a simple statement saying doctors can prescribe this for something that it wasn't originally designed for. It's done all the time. It's called off-label prescriptions. It's a doctor's right to be able to do that, as long as it's an FDA-approved drug.
Okay.
And hydroxychloroquine has been FDA approved for years.
Decades.
Janet Woodcock phoned Rick Bright that same evening. And this is from Rick Bright's own legal deposition. Phoned Rick Bright that same evening, had a BARDA, and said, "Oh, this is a very dangerous drug."
Why did she say that?
I don't know, because she's a rheumatologist. She would have known how safe the drug was. She would have prescribed it herself.
We submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for communications between Rick Bright and Janet Woodcock and received a call from the FDA.
A request for communications is considered a complex track request, and these requests are processed in date order priority, and there are currently 1,100 in queue. So you'd be looking at least 24 months before this comes up for processing.
And incidentally, in terms of safety, Dr. Woodcock was also directly involved in the approval of all of the opioids, including OxyContin and fentanyl, over the last 25 years. A class of drugs taken at home by average Americans and responsible for millions of deaths. Additionally, Janet Woodcock was also on the editorial board of the New England Journal of Medicine when it published the fraudulent Surgisphere study.
To make her head of the FDA, it's not just putting the fox in the hen coop. It's putting the devil in. I can't imagine a worse appointment than Janet Woodcock.